There are rules every rider knows. Then there are the ones nobody talks about, not because they're unimportant, but because most people don't even know they exist. These aren't the basics, they're not in the handbook, and they're not the kind of tips you hear in a parking lot chat with weekend warriors. These are the deep, unspoken motorcycle rules, the ones that only come from years of paying attention to the little patterns that make or break your ride. Some of them are mechanical, some are mental, some are just pure survival. But once you know them, you can't unknow them. So let's pull back the curtain. These are the secret motorcycle rules no one talks about, but every rider should know. Number 1. Stopping with your front wheel turned can throw you to the ground instantly. It doesn't sound dramatic, doesn't even seem dangerous, but every experienced rider either learns this rule early or learns it the hard way. Never come to a full stop with your front wheel turned, especially on uneven ground. You see it all the time. Riders pulling into a gas station or a parking lot turning the bar slightly as they coast in. Then they squeeze the front brake to stop. Boom, the bike drops, not from speed, not from a mistake, but because stopping with the front end turned reduces your stability to almost nothing. Here's why it happens. When the wheel is turned, the fork tubes aren't vertical anymore. That redirects your braking force sideways. If you're on a slope but dip in the pavement or a slightly tilted surface, the bike shifts weight off-center and you're done. The heavier the bike, the faster it goes down. Even worse, a fully turned wheel gives you no leverage to recover. One foot slips and there's no fighting the drop. The rule: straighten the bars before you stop. Even if you're pulling into a tight space, even if it feels fine, keep the wheel aligned until the bike is completely stationary. Then you can turn. This isn't something they put in riding school diagrams, but every dropped bike at 0 miles per hour proves it matters. Number 2. Micro throttle inputs matter more than you think at low speeds. Most riders think throttle control is all about power delivery. Twist for go, roll off to slow down. But here's the rule almost nobody talks about. At low speeds, the tiniest movements of your throttle are doing way more than you realize. And they're either making your life easier or way harder. When you're riding at a walking pace, maneuvering in a parking lot, splitting lanes, doing a U-turn, your clutch and rear brake are doing a lot, sure. But it's the micro adjustments on your throttle that keep the bike stable. A 2% roll-on can smooth out a turn. A sudden 5% blip can cause a lurch. And if you're on a bike with snatchy feeling or a light flywheel, that tiny blip becomes a full-body jolt. You don't notice it until you really start to feel the difference between a steady hand and a noisy one. Even the weight of your hand resting on the bar can accidentally roll the throttle just enough to mess up your balance. The rule: at low speed, treat your throttle like a scalpel, not a light switch. Train yourself to find and hold exact percentages of throttle. Practice slow riding with steady input while using the rear brake to fine-tune speed. This kind of throttle discipline doesn't just help with tight maneuvers, it makes everything smoother. And once you master it, you'll wonder how you ever live without it. Number 3. That gasoline smell in your garage might mean your bike is leaking vapor, not liquid. Most riders think fuel leaks only matter if you see drips on the ground. If nothing's pooling, nothing's wrong, right? Wrong. There's a lesser known but very real danger that sneaks up on a lot of riders: fuel vapor leaks. And they're almost always ignored because you can't see them. You just get that faint gas smell in your garage or shed and figure it's normal. But here's the rule: a consistent fuel odor, especially when the bike hasn't been ridden recently, isn't just annoying. It means vapor is escaping somewhere it shouldn't. It could be a deteriorated fuel line, a loose clamp, a cracked tank vent hose, or a failed O-ring in the fuel cap. And while it may not drip, it's still dangerous. Fuel vapor is highly flammable, and if it collects in an enclosed space like a garage, a single spark from a water heater or a battery tender could ignite it. It's also how many older bikes end up with gradual, invisible fuel system damage, because vapor escaping means oxygen and moisture are getting in. The fix? Track down any persistent fuel odor. Check vent hoses, caps, and clamps. Use your nose like a tool. If you store your bike indoors and it consistently smells like gas, that's a warning sign, not a quirk. It's one of those rules you only learn after something scary happens. But now you know, before it lights up your garage. Number 4. If your side stand bounces when you ride, it's slowly destroying itself. You've seen it, or heard it. The little metallic clack every time you hit a bump or drop into a pothole. The side stand bouncing, just slightly. Harmless, right? Wrong. What most riders don't know is that a bouncing side stand isn't just annoying. It's slowly chewing through the pivot bolt, the spring tension, and even the frame tab that holds the whole thing together. Side stands are designed to stay up, obviously. But over time, if the return spring weakens or the pivot bolt loosens even slightly, the stand starts to rattle. You'll barely notice it, especially on older bikes where everything shakes just a little. But every bounce hammers the same contact points and eventually it fails. Some riders have had their side stand drop mid-ride, hit the ground, and launch the rear tire like a lever. Others have pulled into a parking lot and put the stand down only to watch it collapse because the pivot had wallowed out a hole. And here's the kicker. Once the mount wears out, it's often welded to the frame. That means framework, not just a spring swap. The rule? If your side stand bounces even a little, fix it. Tighten the bolt, replace the spring, add a washer if there's play. It's a 5-minute job that saves you a major failure down the line, and maybe a crash at low speed when your kickstand drops at the worst moment. Number 5. Adjustable levers set wrong can kill your braking without you realizing it. Aftermarket levers are one of the most popular mods riders do. They look great, feel nice, and let you adjust reach to suit your hands. But there's a hidden danger almost no one talks about, and it can mess up your braking in a way that's nearly invisible until it's too late. If you set your lever too close to the bar, especially on the front brake, you can reduce how much travel the master cylinder piston has. That means less hydraulic pressure, weaker braking force, and in some cases, a complete inability to brake hard when you need it most. It feels fine under light braking, but try to panic stop, and you suddenly find that you're squeezing as hard as you can, and it's not enough, because the piston didn't travel far enough to pressurize the system fully. It's more common than people realize, especially on brakes with radial master cylinders or older brake systems with a bit of play. And worse, some riders adjust the lever position based on looks or comfort, not realizing they've partially engaged the system just by setting it too tight, leading to brake drag, overheating, and early pad wear. The rule? Set your levers for full function, not just comfort. Make sure you can pull the brake with 2 fingers without the lever bottoming out. After adjusting, test your max braking at low speed to make sure it's still fully functional. Looks don't matter if your brakes don't work. Number 6. Hanging too many keys off your ignition can destroy it over time. Most riders don't think twice about their keychain. Maybe it's got a house key, a bottle opener, a little leather fob, or maybe even one of those long branded tags. No big deal, right? But here's the secret no one talks about. Extra weight hanging off your ignition key slowly kills your ignition switch, and it's completely avoidable. Here's what happens. As you ride, those dangling keys bounce, swing, and pull down on the ignition barrel. Over time, that constant movement and vibration wears out the internal tumblers and electrical contacts. Eventually, your key starts to feel gritty when you turn it. You have to jiggle it just right to get the bike to start. Then one day, click, nothing. The whole ignition fails, and now you're stranded or facing a major repair. And on some bikes, the ignition is tied to the immobilizer, ECU, or steering lock. So what should be a simple fix becomes a nightmare of electronic resets, matched keys, and triple-digit labor costs. The rule: keep your ignition key alone. Or if you must carry something, make it ultralight and short. No swinging tags, no trinkets, no bundles. It's a tiny detail almost no one talks about until they're sitting in a parking lot with a dead ignition, wondering why the key that worked for years suddenly doesn't turn anymore. Number 7. Your fuel cap vent can clog and cause power loss. Your bike starts fine, rides fine, then after 20 minutes, it bogs. Maybe it stumbles under throttle. You stop, let it sit, and weirdly, it runs fine again. No check engine light, no fuel leak, no obvious issue. What gives? Here's the rule almost no one knows until it bites them. Your fuel cap vent can clog, and when it does, your tank becomes a vacuum trap. Modern fuel tanks need to breathe. As fuel is used, air needs to enter to prevent a vacuum from forming. If the vent line or cap breather gets blocked by dirt, bugs, spilled fuel, or even corrosion, the tank starts to create negative pressure. The result? Fuel flow slows or stops entirely. Your engine starves under load. Then it magically fixes itself when the bike rests and pressure equalizes. This issue could mimic everything from bad injectors to failing fuel pumps, and most shops start replacing expensive parts before checking the cap. And on some bikes, especially sport models or older machines, the vent is built into the cap itself, making it hard to notice or test. The fix? Crack the cap open next time the issue happens. If you hear a whoosh of air, that's your diagnosis. Clean the breather, inspect the vent line. If needed, drill the tiny breather hole in the cap with a fine bit. Carefully. It's a secret most riders don't know. But once you've been stranded by a clogged vent, you'll never forget it. Number 8. You're probably adjusting your mirrors wrong for real-world riding. Everyone adjusts their mirrors the same way. Sit on a bike, square up, and angle them until you see what's behind you. But here's the secret. Your mirrors aren't just for what's behind. You need them set for what's coming up beside you. Most riders unknowingly keep their mirrors tilted too far inward. That gives them a great view of their own shoulders or a perfect line of traffic behind them, but almost zero coverage of their blind spots. The problem? Most life-threatening surprises don't come from behind. They come from the next lane over. Here's the rule that no one talks about. Adjust your mirrors wider, so wide that your shoulders are barely in the frame. You should overlap your rear view with your peripheral awareness, not duplicate it. That way, the second a car enters your blind zone, it shows up in the mirror before it disappears from your side vision. It feels weird at first. Some riders even think, but I can see directly behind me. That's what head checks are for. Your mirrors should be tuned for lateral awareness, because lane changers, tailgaters, and sudden passers don't sneak up directly behind. They ride up your flanks. This one trick can drastically reduce the time something spends in your blind spot, and that's how you stay ahead of threats instead of reacting too late. Number 9. Brake fluid absorbs moisture from the air. Most riders know they're supposed to change their brake fluid every couple years, but unless the brakes feel spongy, most people ignore it. After all, you haven't even opened the cap, so how could anything go wrong? But here's a part no one tells you. Brake fluid is hygroscopic. It absorbs water from the air through rubber seals and lines, even if the reservoir stays sealed. That means your fluid can degrade just sitting there, especially in humid environments or bikes that are stored outdoors or in non-climate controlled garages. And when moisture gets into your brake fluid, bad things start to happen. Boiling point drops. Corrosion begins forming inside your calipers and master cylinder. And worst of all, you won't feel it until your brakes fade when you need them the most. usually during aggressive riding, hard stops, or emergency braking on hot days. You can't top it off and expect it to be fixed. You can't eyeball the fluid and know what shape it's in. And unless you're using a brake fluid tester, which most riders don't, you're guessing. The rule: flush your brake fluid every 1 to 2 years, even if you barely ride, especially on older bikes or anything with rubber brake lines. It's cheap, fast, and it can prevent complete brake failure when you least expect it. It's not glamorous, but it might be the only thing between you and the car you almost stopped for. Number 10. Your clutch free play changes as you ride, and most riders never recheck it. Clutch free play seems like a set it and forget it thing. You adjust the lever once, feel that perfect bite point, and move on. But here's the part no one tells you. Clutch free play can change while you ride, sometimes within a single session. Why? Because as your bike heats up, the clutch cable expands, the plates heat soak, and hydraulic systems, if equipped, shift slightly in pressure. That perfect 2 to 3 millimeter gap you had when the engine was cold, it might shrink to zero. And once you lose that free play, you're in danger of riding with a partially engaged clutch, even if it feels normal. That leads to poor performance, slip and under load, and accelerated clutch wear. In bad cases, it also causes clutch drag, which makes downshifting rough or causes the bike to creep at a stop even with the lever pulled in. And if you're riding twisties, track days, or city traffic, the heat builds up fast and that slack disappears quicker than you'd expect. The rule: don't just set free play once, check it throughout the season. If your clutch starts feeling off, don't jump to conclusions. Feel the gap at the lever. If there's none, you probably lost the buffer. Number 11. Leaving your bike in gear at a stop isn't just a safety move, it prevents transmission damage. When you stop and pop the bike into neutral, your transmission is disengaged, but your output shaft is still spinning slightly, especially if the clutch is dragging even a little. And over time, that gentle, constant spinning while the bike idles in neutral can round off dogs and wear shift forks, especially on bikes with tighter gearbox tolerances or lighter oil. It also creates a tiny shock load every time you click back into first, particularly if you let the clutch out a little too early or don't match revs cleanly. Multiply that by thousands of lights over years of riding, and you've got a box that shifts like gravel. Leaving the bike in first at stops keeps the transmission engaged and stable. No clunk, no chatter, no mid-stop shock loads, just steady engagement, ready to roll. And yes, keep your hand on the clutch, don't let it creep. But doing this also keeps you mentally alert and physically ready to react, instead of treating every stop like a parked moment. It's one of those habits that feels small until your gearbox thanks you at 60,000 miles. Number 12. Your coolant overflow hose can act like a pressure relief valve, and if it's clogged, you're toast. Most riders never give a second thought to the little rubber hose dangling near the bottom of the bike, the one connected to the coolant overflow bottle or radiator neck. But that line isn't just there to vent extra fluid. It plays a critical role in regulating pressure and preventing your cooling system from turning into a steam-powered volcano. Here's a rule almost no one knows. If that hose gets kinked, pinched, melted, or clogged with dried coolant or grime, your bike can't relieve excess pressure. And when the system can't vent properly, it starts doing something much worse. It builds heat and pressure until it finds a weak spot. That might be a radiator seam, a gasket, a hose clamp, or the plastic overflow tank itself. Suddenly your bike's spraying coolant at a stoplight, the temp lights flashing, and you're wondering how things went south so fast. This problem is especially common on bikes that have been modified, crashed, or repaired by someone sloppy. The hose gets rerouted poorly, zip-tied too tight, or replaced with something that collapses under vacuum. The rule: inspect your overflow hose every season. Make sure it's clear, soft, properly routed, and not touching hot exhaust parts. Blow through it if you have to. A 5-minute check can prevent a full-on cooling failure that leaves you stranded or worse, damages your engine. It's one of the smallest parts on your bike, and one of the most quietly critical. These rules don't make you look cool. They don't win arguments online, but they keep your bike running longer, keep your body safer, and keep your mind sharper. So here's your move. Go back to your bike. Look at it differently. Think about the parts you've been ignoring, the habits you developed, and the assumptions you never questioned. And if even one of these rules changes how you ride tomorrow, it was worth it. Got a secret rule of your own? Drop it in the comments. Let's pass the real knowledge around before someone learns it the hard way. If this helped you out, hit that like button and subscribe. The stuff no one talks about. That's exactly what we're here for. Ride smart, stay sharp, and keep the rubber side down.